believe it's ready, Mr.
Good.
We'll double check.
Good.
It says it's locked.
Okay, I'm going to call this public hearing to order. I'm going to start with introduction of our roll call here. Down at the far end there to my right is Sean Day, our Planning and Development Officer, Councillor McGregor, CAO Weirs. To my left, Councillor Fraser, Deputy Mayor McKinnon, and myself, Mayor White. Regrets from Councillor Dunn, who's unavailable to be here this evening. I do want to start by acknowledging that we are meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. We are all treaty people, and we work towards reconciliation on a continual basis. I also want to acknowledge the histories, legacies, and legacies and contributions, I should say, of the African Nova Scotia people who have been here for over 400 years. With that, declaration of conflict of interest. Anyone on council having a declaration to declare? Hearing and seeing none. This public hearing is with regard to two things. One is the rezoning application for 2157 South Main Street, as well as the second part of that is a development agreement with the same address with regard to the former Highland Consolidated School. So to begin with, I'm going to ask CAO Weirs for a few words just to indicate where we are in this process.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, by my count, I think the third public hearing that Westville has undertaken with regard to development on that, the Highland Consolidated School site. So there was one back in 2023 related to the site. There was one in 2024 related to long-term care facility that we're hoping would go on that site. This is, as I said, the third, and in technically this will be the third and fourth public hearing about development on that particular site. That level of consultation far exceeds what is required by the town, or that is required by the town under the Municipal Government Act. And so just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands that. There are, as the mayor said, two things happening today. The first public hearing is about rezoning that site. So currently that site has, it's a 21-acre site in total that the town owns. It has two different zones on it right now. Currently it is zoned institutional on a larger portion of the site that contains the school. And then the area that is, I would call it behind Monroe Street, or the dwellings along Monroe Street, is zoned R2. And so the proposal today is to rezone that entire site comprehensive development district. And that, by rezoning the entire site that way, it gives the town the ability to undertake multiple development agreements on that single site. So it is a way, and each development agreement that might be, we're hoping to negotiate in the future. For example, if the long-term care facility the government were to announce the request for proposals in the next few weeks, we would want to, whoever the successful operator of that site would be, the town would want to have a development agreement with them about the development of that long-term care facility. And this zoning allows us to do that, to negotiate a development agreement just for a particular site. So it's a real step in ensuring that on an ongoing basis, the residents of Westville have an opportunity to understand and voice their opinions about all future development on that 21-acre site, because each time we negotiate a development agreement, it has to go through the same public hearing process that you're sitting in right now. And so, you know, it's an important way to make sure that the voice of Westville residents keeps getting heard by council as we move forward trying to develop that site. So I think that's really the key things that I wanted to say, is that, you know, there hopefully will be additional development on that site over the coming years. And each time that a new development happens there, there will have to be a public hearing. So every time we negotiate a new development agreement, there will have to be another public hearing. So, so that the interests of Westville residents are covered that way. So you'll be able to come and voice your opinion for or against each of the developments as those development agreements are negotiated. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Day.
I'm just going to comment that with the comprehensive development district, although we will not have to go through rezoning applications for future development on that site. So that's the gist of the why we're doing it, forming a comprehensive development district, is to speed up the process when those developments start happening. We will not have to at least go through the step of having a zoning change and zoning request to change. So, Mr. Day, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think we're on. So, one thing that may be a little bit confusing is how we do the two things at the same time in the same evening, the rezoning and then the development agreement, because we can only look at the development agreement once the land is rezoned. The Municipal Government Act has a provision in it that allows for this, and the way it works is if council, after considering the report and the application for rezoning and any input from the public, decide that rezoning makes sense and decide to approve it, that's logged. And then we go through the same kind of conversation with respect to a development agreement that can happen and be entered once the rezoning is in place. That can be approved this evening, but it can't be entered until the rezoning goes through all of the subsequent procedures around notifications and the option for appeal. So should someone determine that for whatever reason they feel that the rezoning was undertaken in error in some fashion, or it's a poor idea, and they choose to appeal it, that would hold off any adoption of a development agreement. So there's sort of a 1-2 process. Both processes are subject to the potential for appeal, but they have to happen consecutively. Tonight, however, we can have the 2 public hearings, and council can vote on both matters, and that starts the clock, first on the rezoning and then on the development agreement. All right.
Mr. Day, could I just ask that you speak as close as you can to the mic? Because I know that, I know we can all hear you in here, but when it is streamed on YouTube, sometimes there's a difficulty if we're not speaking directly and closely into the mics. So I've been told and understand.
You can sit if you want.
You can sit if you wish.
I kind of like to stand, if it's
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Then please stand.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to just gloss over this first bit because it's already been mentioned why we're here and what we're up to. This has already been gone through, that we have the institutional and residential 2-unit zone currently on the property. We're seeking to move to comprehensive development district. And that is what allows us to consider what is the big goal for this evening, is to put ourselves in a place where the Highland Consolidated Middle School can be repurposed for housing. So this is the lot that we're talking about. It's almost 21 acres in area. I think I have the ability here, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So isn't moving the way I anticipate it will. Around the site, we have across South Main Street, we have a series of kind of older homes that are quite elegant. We have mostly R2, but we do have an R3 property right here. And down this side on Monroe, we have a series of R2 properties, and wrapping along the back of Queen, much closer to the road and further away from the development, we have another series of houses. The area on this side of the site to the northeast right now is vacant. We do have a small drainage course that runs through this back portion of the site, and that eventually crosses throughout town. It crosses Drummond just down the road toward Maine, and eventually goes north out of town. And that's an important consideration in this site. I think everyone who knows of the site knows about the large flat area in the back. It's a soccer pitch. They probably are aware that there's a fair bit of wooded land that wraps the soccer pitch, and have a good sense of the high school, or middle school, I guess it was itself, and the large open lawn that's in front of it currently. Probably also aware that there's a lodge just to the west of that along South Main. So some recent history. Mr. Weirs has gone through some of it already, but just to recap. The school was closed in 2014 and left to the town, which is typically what happens to schools. They're left to the municipality, regardless of whether the municipality wants that building or those lands or not. Mr. Weirs perhaps didn't mention tonight, but has in the past talked about several attempts that the town went through trying to find new owners for the site and to repurpose that land and the building. Up until now, they didn't go anywhere. We're confident that now we're in a better position for a whole number of reasons, largely to do with the context that we're in right now, but also because we've got a really good partner on this project. The neighborhood would, of course, be concerned, as is the town, about the increasing state of dilapidation due to vandalism and just wear and tear. Buildings don't like to be empty over the course of time. It is, however, affording some housing to several animals currently. But that's what we have today. We want to move past this. We're going to move to a much better place. So context is always important in planning. Everyone would be well aware that we have a pretty significant housing crisis, not just here, but pretty much right across Canada, and in all likelihood through many parts of the US as well. That will be my last mention of the US tonight. I've already discussed the fact that the neighborhood is rightly concerned about the nature of the property currently. The property is beautifully located in the core of the community, very close to the downtown, and also it's well serviced. There are 3-phase power lines running down both sides of the property, and there's a 6-inch water line running right into the middle of it. So water flow and fire servicing are in place. It's already been mentioned that there's some possibility that we will be getting a long-term care center, and that through the study the town has done in the consultation, this site is an ideal site for that. Fortunately, it's a very large site. This map, just briefly, I'm showing this just to indicate the zones that are around the property. The large blue shape that shows the small access out to Queen, that is the site that the school is currently located on, and the remainder is that triangular shape that also has access out to Monroe, which is zoned R2. So Comprehensive Development District, what is that? Some of you may have come to the public hearing around adoption of this legislation. In effect, it's a way of looking at very large properties and looking at all the things that may happen on those properties and putting ourselves in a position, or putting the town in a position, where they can manage that in a way that makes sense, not only with respect to the surrounding neighborhood, but also with respect to the different kinds of uses that can be accommodated on the site, the current context of the day, what do we need, what are the community's needs right now, how do we make Westville great? These things can all be wrapped up through this process, and we felt it was important, given not only the interest in the school's conversion, but also in the potential of a long-term care center, to adopt this sort of legislation to allow us to do this. So I've already mentioned this. I think I've just talked about all these points. I'm going to get into the specific objectives in a moment. And it's been mentioned that these would happen through development agreements. Now, this isn't necessary in a comprehensive development district. You can have certain development happen as of right, which means if they meet the requirements for lot setbacks, the kinds of uses and that sort of thing, they would get permission just like anyone would on any other lot. We felt in this instance, however, since the kinds of development we're anticipating having happen are larger typically, it was more important that the neighborhood get that chance to participate in the discussions and the decisions being made. And the way to do that is through the development agreement process. The beauty of the development agreement process is also that it runs with the land. So in any of the sections of this property that get an approved development agreement, even if the owners who negotiated that agreement through this public process and with the town, that would be registered with the deed. And so were they to sell that land, those same set of requirements that are contained in the development agreement would move on to the next owner. So the neighborhood around the development would have that comfort knowing that these provisions that they heard about through this process were going to move forward in time. There was some discussion at the beginning whether it should just be the portion of the overall property that was being transferred to the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council that be rezoned, or the overall area. But in light of what I've talked about now, how you really get that comprehensive understanding of how the site can be managed and what can happen there through addressing the entire site, not only a portion of the site, it made sense to do all of it at once, and also to streamline future discussions like this one, so we don't have to do this 1-2 step each time. It allows also an interjection of, or I guess an affirmation of the need for collaboration, because we don't know exactly who's coming to this site. We do know that we have a first mover in the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, but the next people or the next agencies interested in the site are somewhat unknown to us at this point. In fact, really entirely unknown to us at this point. That's why it's important that we develop what we called right now a framework to guide future development on the site, and I'm just going to briefly get into that. So there's no way to make all of this small. There's a lot of information that has been gone through to get to this point. But within this framework, some of the key items that we've identified as objectives for the site are obviously to provide room for the consolidated high school renovations to become housing, to provide adequate space for a long-term care center, should we be lucky enough to have it housed on this site. We want a mix of kinds of housing, not only in terms of type, but also in the affordabilities and the tenure of housing. We need to respect the surrounding neighborhood and its character. We want to continually move toward increased sustainability. We're always looking for ways to increase the vibrancy of the town of Westville, and by injecting jobs and more people living within the communities, particularly in close proximity to the downtown, we feel that we're helping move that needle forward. And we also are reminding ourselves that we have to be very careful not to ask too much. It's always, it's easy when you're having a negotiation with a developer to ask a lot of the developer, but it's very hard to do development right now. The cost of money is high. We've got supply chain issues. We have labor issues. There's any number of factors that are frustrating development currently. And so the community, the town, in negotiating agreements has to be mindful of that. So we've added that to our list of objectives. So in terms of implementation, there was a series, I'm just going to flip all these up now, of things that we wanted to focus on. Site appearance and safety. We're not in a good situation right now. We want to move past that as quickly as we reasonably can. And so we've introduced a phasing requirement, and I'll bring that up later when we talk about the development agreement, that indicates that the first work that gets done with respect to this rezoning and this potential development agreement is to start restoring the old school building, getting the windows redone, making sure that water's not getting in, evicting all the animals, those sorts of things. We also, and this was mentioned earlier, we want to be good neighbors with the work that happens here. And so the phasing and the nature of what can happen on the site is something that we thought about, and how do we ensure that what happens on the site act in the fashion of good neighbors. That's going to come up again in a bit. And I've already mentioned development agreements only. That was a decision that was made as being part of being good neighbors for those around the site. So, intensity of use. This is getting to this idea of good neighbors. Right now, I'm going to see if I can get this little laser guide to behave now. You can see that there's 3 different shades. Around the existing built-up area that's quite close, we have a neighborhood periphery area on the site, and that would have development that is very similar to the kinds of development that happen around it. Primarily along Monroe, where the houses are fairly close to the edge of the site. This next area is called a general neighborhood area. It can have higher levels of development intensity, so it might be more like townhouses or quads or those sorts of units. So you're getting into more efficiency in terms of land use, more efficiency in terms of how much energy it requires to run the houses, how you can use fewer building materials to create more dwelling units. There's a whole number of things that augur for this kind of housing going forward. And finally, I did miss one, but I'll come back to it. You get into the core area, which has the school now and which will hopefully house a long-term care center. So that's the highest level of intensity of development on the site, but it's shielded by the 2 lower areas of development intensity. I hope that will stay there. The last area I wanted to bring your attention to is up at the top along South Main. I mentioned earlier that there are some really classic Nova Scotia vernacular houses.
Sorry.
Is that an elephant? Is there an elephant in the room? Someone should have told me. So the idea in this portion is that there would be some architectural guidelines for what happens there, such that houses, or dwellings rather, they could have more than 1 unit in them, would have an architectural character which complemented the buildings on the other side of the street to maintain the character as you come into Westville along South Main. This is wrong. I'm going to show you what's right later. But the point of this slide is to show you conceptually how we see dividing these lots up. And this is only wrong with respect to this little bump right here. This area could be sold to a developer. They would have a development agreement concerning the houses or the dwellings along South Main. This area, which would follow a proposed road extending from the existing entrance into the school site, which stops right here currently, would house residential on both sides with the lower level of intensity of development on the neighboring side or the periphery of the existing development, and then this band can be a bit higher. And then this large area, a lot of which contains that drainage course, if you recall, is where we would see potentially the developer of a long-term care center purchasing that area of land and entering a separate agreement for development on that site. We anticipate this connection to Queen Street staying as a kind of a pedestrian or a multimodal transportation corridor. And we see having this be a road in the same sense that we have the entrances, the 2 entrances off Main. So that provides good safety to the community and good access to the overall site. This is hard to see. I apologize for that. It is a proposed use of the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council's land that they would be using for the restoration of the school into housing, potentially a daycare in what was the, I believe, the Industrial Arts Annex, parking and drop-off for daycare, In this area, potentially some commercial uses inside the building. These would be things that would be useful to the neighborhood and also to the residents inside. So they're complementary and small commercial uses. They're not required, but they are permitted. And possibly some parking here for that. This area right now is shown as park, but it is available for development under that general residential requirement. Whenever we look at increasing the use of a site, we always take a look at whether or not we have safe access to the site. I took these today, so they're quite current. This is looking in a southerly direction. You can see that we can see quite a long way, and there would be no problem exiting from this lower entrance. And the same thing going in this way. The upper entrance also has very good stopping site distances. I always want to say that the other way around. So, some planning considerations. We have a couple of policies that we look at when we're doing an evaluation of a rezoning application. Implementation Policy 12 is the main one. And it asks that we, for example, review other planning policies. In this case, we would be taking a look at the CDD policy because that's relevant in this instance. And any others that talk about things like the kinds of uses that happen in neighborhoods, things that may be prohibited, that sort of thing. We've gone through that. We didn't see any issue with it. We always want to be mindful of existing servicing and how to make better use of that. This is an infill project, and that is about the best way we can possibly make use of the services that are already installed in the town. We look at, are there fire safety concerns? And I've already mentioned road safety. We look at compatibility with the surrounding area. Now, I've spoken at length about that at this point. Using development agreements such that the surrounding neighborhood can play a role in decision-making, and also being mindful of the scale of the development on the overall site by using this transition from lower density development around the periphery and then higher at the middle. So we feel that through this 1-2 punch of moving to a CDD and development agreement with that set of guidelines in place helps us take care of the surrounding neighborhood. Really, this is just a reminder that it's important to, if we are going to seek to kind of really boost the vitality and fiscal viability of the town, we want to keep things as close to the town amenities so that people can access those easily and potentially without a car if you need to. And we have to look at environmental constraints. I've mentioned that there's a water course on the site. We are, as everyone has experienced, receiving increasingly intense rain events, and that is leading to downstream flooding, not just here, but everywhere. You probably have seen some of those large rain events, I think it was 2 years ago, that were washing out entire roads, they were washing out bridges, they were causing significant areas of flooding. So everything we do that increases hard surface, and by hard surface I mean anything that isn't absorbing water. So it's roads, it's sidewalks, it's rooftops, anything like that that isn't absorbing water, that's all increasing the amount of runoff coming off a site and potentially causing problems downstream. So we would be being bad neighbors if we weren't paying attention to that. We'd be causing trouble not only for parts of Westville that are downstream of this site, but also moving into the neighboring county and urban areas before the water makes its way out to sea. Trees and buffering is important. It probably doesn't need to be highlighted here. I think everyone would expect that we'd be paying attention to buffering. Again, the development agreement and paying attention to the nature of the buildings on the site through the design section of the development agreement. We'll talk to this or speak to this. And also, there are a number of reasons we want trees, and I won't go through them all. I'm sure you're all aware of them, but they will pop back up in a little bit. We also have Implementation Policy 13. These are rezoning implications. I don't need to dwell on these because, first of all, or let me just back up a bit. When you do a rezoning, you have to not only consider what's being put forward as the potential development, but you also have to consider what else could happen in that zone. That's the beauty of this approach. There is no as-of-right development. So the only thing we have to consider is what is being proposed and what would come through the development agreement process. So there aren't surprises as a consequence. Whereas with the as-of-right process, once you change the zone, anything permitted in that zone could happen on that site, provided it can meet requirements around setbacks, height, parking, and those sorts of things. And so in this instance, we have the development agreement process. We don't even have the less, there's less involvement in the site plan approval, but we're not even using that. It's straight to development agreement. I'll go through these quickly. Many of them aren't applicable. There's no implication on drinking water. I've already spoke to the issue of flood risk. There's no implication with respect to agricultural land. Infrastructure, what that statement of provincial interest does is ask us to be smart in how we use our infrastructure and how we extend it or whether we manage it in other ways that are fiscally prudent. So that's something we're mindful of through this process. And of course, the one that is at top of the list right now is the issue of housing affordability and availability. And right now, it's not good. And so bit by bit, we're seeking to improve upon that. This is a render of what the school could look like through this process. It may change a little bit. Windows may move around, doors may move around. And you would also expect to see perhaps a line of trees running along in front of it and many little landscaped areas. But on the whole, this is the sort of thing we're envisioning for the school. And I wish I had the first shot I put up of the school today and how it has looked in the past so that you can really get a sense of the dramatic improvement that this would represent. And, you know, not to mention, we hope at least 65 new homes just in this building and possibly more, as well as others that may be developed on this particular approximately 3.2 acre site that would be carved away from the overall 21 acre site. I'm going to stop there and perhaps see if there are questions.
Sorry. Council questions so far? Anyone?
No, this appears to be the same as what was presented at PAC.
I should just point out that it's 65 plus apartments in the building, not 65 plus separate standing homes.
Apartments are homes too.
I understand that. I agree 100%, but I just want to make that clarification so people aren't confused.
And also not reserved for those 65 plus.
Yeah, a good point as well, yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Hadn't thought of that as well.
Well, that's as soon as I saw that, that's what I thought.
So maybe what I'll do is basically, it is a public hearing, and that's why we advertise it, that's why you all came, I'm assuming, is to find out what's going on. So I will give the opening to ask, to this point in time in the presentation that Mr. Day has done, if there's any clarification or questions that anyone has, certainly try to entertain them for you.
Your Honor, if I might,
Yep.
if anybody wants to give some time to make their way to the mic. One of the things that I'd like to just say, and I meant to say at the front end, but was stupid and forgot it, is that as that building sits now, it is a significant liability to the town. We will, if something doesn't happen to that building, the town will have to demolish it at some point if it continues to deteriorate. I don't know exactly how much that will cost. I do know that the range is somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million. So that as it sits there right now, it is up to $1 million liability that taxpayers in Westville will have to foot that bill if we have to tear it down. The NSCC proposal to take that liability off the hands of the town and use it to create 65 dwellings turns that $1 million liability into a $3 million asset. So we've had engineers look at it, or appraisers look at it, and they have valued the structure as it is at, to replace the kind of structure, the shell of the building, it would take $3 million. So by going down this road and working with Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, Westville is taking $1 million liability and turning it into a $3 million asset. That's a $4 million delta shift in the value of that property. So it's a significant step forward, and it allows Westville to sidestep what otherwise would be an inevitable cost to the town.
I might add to that, I think if Diane or Alec were putting a number on it, when the project is completed, the value of it is going to be substantially more than $3 million.
It will be north of 12 million and likely in the 14 to 15 million.
Yes.
Based on all of our current assessments.
So I'm just going to repeat that, Diane, because I have a mic and you don't. So the president and CEO of Nova Scotia Cooperative Council was saying to the mayor's question, you know, what's the worth of it at the end of this? Diane Kelderman is saying it is a 12 to 14 or perhaps $15 million project. So that's a significant move from being, you know, around a $750 or $1 million liability. That's a huge change.
Any question, comments that anyone has? I'm going to direct them to Mr. Day when they come, by the way. I don't propose to have the answers. But if none, you know, we can move on, perhaps, Sean, then to the next. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't see it, sorry. Yeah, just if you want to come up, give your name and address, that would be appreciated.
My name is Joe Doyle. I live on Monroe Street. I'm just wondering about the excess property around what you've decided to rezone. If there's any chance that that could be expropriated by anyone for future development in the back area behind the school? Like that area between the school property and Drummond Road, that's currently not utilized for now, and anywhere else
Do you
behind.
mean the school property and Queen Street?
No,
Beyond the school property, I think you're asking.
well, if you go
Sean, can
to
you put the
school,
map up?
the area to the left and behind is between the residences on South Main Street and Queen Street.
So you're asking, would the town look at expropriating those properties?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, I don't think at this point in time we have any intention of doing that.
Well, no intention right now, but I'm just
No,
questioning. for
there's
the
no
futures.
intention to do it, and we can only speak for this council and what, you know, I don't believe that that's even been discussed or thought about.
There'd be no purpose, there'd be no purpose for us at this. You're talking the properties that would run parallel to Purvis here, between South Main and Queen? Is that what
Yeah.
you mean, the properties in behind that isn't part of this?
Beyond the property, the 21
Yeah.
acres.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
currently
to the
owned,
north.
that's
Oh,
currently
north.
owned by individuals.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interpreting. And I'm going to say, speak on behalf of council, that there's no thought or plan to do that at this point in time, and I don't see it in the future, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
We have our hands full dealing with the 21 acres to get development going there. We'll be more than happy to see the 21 acres utilized as a town. So, and I just wanted to remind everyone that the questions and the point we're at right now is with regard to the rezoning. We are going to get into the actual development agreement. I'm assuming we're going to lump the two of them together, basically. It'll be two separate matters that council will have to deal with, you know, because we have to do the rezoning approval first and then the development agreement. But to this point in time, Sean has only been speaking with regard to the rezoning of that property. Okay? Just to be clear on that.
All right, part two,
Exciting part.
the exciting part. Wait till I talk about sandwiches. You're going to like that. So, we've seen this before. I'm not going to belabor it. We know that. So, as I mentioned, the final decision was that we would be looking at the entire site with respect to rezoning, but only a portion of the site on one lot. And it's the lot where we currently have this, or the piece of land around this. So, and we've seen this, and this has the corrected property lines. You'll notice that if I can get my little, he just does not want to do what I want him to do. This bit actually attaches into the low periphery potential development site that runs down like this, as opposed to forming part of the school site, but we've expanded the school site back further in this direction. So tonight, the development agreement area is just this portion of the land. It doesn't include this one, the periphery, South Main, or the area where the long-term care center could go. I've gone through these again. I won't do it again now because we don't have any new people. They are the same set of objectives that I mentioned before that is contained in this document that is kind of a planning framework for the overall site. And that would be part of our evaluation for any development agreements negotiated on the site. We've already gone through this, and we've seen this.
We'd like to look at that a long time.
You want me to go back?
No, fine.
I'm just calling out a couple of areas, and again, these may not happen exactly like this. These are just to give us an idea of some thoughts on how the site may be treated. But if, for example, if there were some commercial uses along the front in this corner, as one set of floor plans suggests, there may be some commercial parking in this area. So this might be something like it could be a massage therapist, it could be someone doing a small hair salon, something like that. There's any number of smaller uses that could happen in the site at a small scale and which anyone in the neighborhood would be able to have access to. I also called this up before. I just thought it would be useful to blow it up. Again, the current idea is that this part of the structure, the old industrial arts site, could be a daycare. There's, I think, 330 spaces that are being sought right now in the area. So it's a huge problem for working families that don't have daycare. It's not easy to get daycare approval. So what we're doing right now is we're saying, if you get the approvals, you can do it on this site. And we're suggesting that it happen in the existing building. And when you do have daycares, there's a fair bit of traffic a couple of times a day. So some provision around how that would be handled is being shown here, and potential staff parking. The province has requirements around how many parking spaces you have to have. It does take up a lot of land, which is unfortunate, but that's the nature of the beast currently. This is, you haven't seen this before, this is a potential render of what the back area might look like, the old industrial arts space. But as you can see here, there would also be plantings and a play area, an outside play area for kids, which is also a requirement for daycares. There's discussion about rooftop gardens and also a green roof. Now, a green roof is a great way to manage the stormwater that falls on. Mr. Weirs, what is the size of the floor plate on that? It's around 4,800 square feet? No, more than that.
47,000 square feet.
No, it's, no.
The total school? Yeah, so 47,000 is the 2 floors.
Yeah.
So it's half of that,
Right.
24,000.
It's a lot. That's half an acre up there, receiving water when it rains heavily. If you have a green roof, that helps absorb that water, slows down how fast it gets into our water system. We also, hang on, I thought I had another thing coming up there. Well, we'll move on to this. We've also made provisions to allow solar panels, basically anywhere you can put them on the site. They can help reduce costs of running the building itself. Potentially, depending on how you structure delivery of power, it can potentially reduce power costs to residents as well. And if you do it over a parking lot, like they're doing here, it provides shade to those parked cars, which is a great place to put solar. But it could also be on the roof, which is a very common place for it as well. This is a dry creek. It's just an example of another natural way of handling intense rainwater that's attractive when it's not being used to both filter and hold high amounts of rain. It's done very intentionally. It has a system underground that you can't see here that is all built around exactly this kind of function. So these are some of the things that we're encouraging the use of. But at this point, until more detailed design is done, we don't know exactly how all the pieces will fit together. The puzzle is a little bit of a mystery. So this is the sandwich part. So development agreements are like a sandwich. The interesting stuff is in the middle. So they start off with a bunch of whereas statements which discuss really exciting things like who the parties are, what's being applied for, land title, specific definitions, applicability of bylaws and regulations, and costs and obligations. Then, at the end, there's more white bread, important white bread, mind you. So it's a boilerplate section that talks about enforcement and effect, like when the agreement comes into effect, discharge, if it ever is potentially to be discharged, and what kinds of provisions there are around that. And there's a section for signatures for those who are going to be signing on so that this can then be registered in relation to the property. Now, the middle bit, which is where the good stuff is, in this case talks about land use, subdivisions and services, streets and municipal services. That bit's a bit dry as well. Environmental measures and amendments. I'm going to briefly pop into the actual agreement if my computer will allow me, but I wanted to talk a little bit about land use, subdivision, and services first. So we have a land use bylaw that is how you generally regulate as of right development. So if someone comes in and they want to develop a store on Main Street or a duplex or something like that, if it's an as of right use in the zone that they're in, they can come in with a site plan and some building drawings and say, here, Sean, I think we've hit all the targets. And if they have, they get a permit, they walk out, they start construction. So we also have a subdivision bylaw, as all towns do, and that's what regulates the division of land. It was drafted quite a while ago, as was the land use bylaw and the planning strategy. And right now, it has provisions in it which don't, for example, allow subdivision of lots without frontage. Even if you can get to it, a lot of land in Westville is landlocked. There are big portions of land. You were speaking about some of this land. It's hard to get to that land. And so our subdivision bylaw currently makes it difficult to access and subdivide those lands to make them available for use. And often they're in the serviced area of town. So they're exactly where you would want to see development happening in terms of making the best use of the overall land base of the community and the best use of the existing infrastructure. Through the development agreement process, any tricky bits of the subdivision bylaw that we need to not have apply in this instance because we're using the development agreement can be waived. By the same token, provisions around land use for the size of buildings or setbacks, these sorts of things, also can be waived by, in effect, having a mini land use bylaw inside the development agreement. And so that's what we've done in this instance. We have stipulations that allow, for instance, more than one building on a portion of land. Nova Scotia Cooperative Council will have one block of land, but they could potentially have several buildings on that block of land, much like a campus would have. And so there are, within this agreement, there are provisions for if you're developing townhouses, for instance. It talks about how far they have to be from other buildings. It talks about maximum heights. It talks about parking provisions and these sorts of things. So once the development agreement is registered, they then, in effect, can come in for as-of-right development for these other not accessory, but additional buildings, potentially, if they decide that they would like to do that with the balance of their land. And it would be a pretty fast process, because as long as they come in with a set of drawings that show that they tick the boxes, it's then like an as-of-right development. So that's a section that we have built in. And each of those areas that I talked about, so there was the periphery, close to Monroe, for instance, that would have development capacity very similar to what you can do on Monroe Street in an R2 zone. Then you have the general neighborhood section, which allows you to go slightly higher in terms of, not so much height, but more in terms of how many units you can put on a section of land. And then you have the middle bit where things like the existing, I would say, medium density building is with respect to housing. So that's an important section of this development agreement. You always get into streets and municipal services and development agreements unless they're just butting up on a street and it's already serviced. That would be the case in the front, those lots that are right on South Main. We wouldn't have much to say about streets and municipal services because they're just going to tie into what runs along the street. In this case, particularly in the middle of the lot, where we don't know exactly what's going to happen around this space, we've talked a lot about needing to cooperate with the other stakeholders on the site. And so that's going to be something that when people sign on to this DA, they will know that they're going to have to work with who's around them so that on the whole, the overall development that's anticipated through this framework that we developed can get implemented to the best manner possible on the site. And also reflecting the other values that are embedded in that framework around, being good neighbors and around sustainability and around ensuring that the site is safe for, kids, seniors, everybody, whether they're biking or walking or in a car or jumping on the bus. That's all built into this agreement. I've talked a little bit about environmental measures. The only ones that are really hard and fast is that we can't increase the amount of stormwater coming off the site or the rate that it comes off the site. So we have a downstream system that can handle a certain amount of water. If you put more onto that system, it will start causing downstream flooding. That's not fair, and it's not just to those neighboring areas. So that is a hard and fast part. The other things that I mentioned before around solar and the use of natural stormwater systems, those are ideas that could make a better site going forward and showcasing new ways of doing development, but they're not hard and fast requirements. I think that that's primarily it in terms of environmental measures. I am going to briefly jump into the amendments section because this is an important one and I don't want to miss anything. So you're going to get a glimpse of the overall DA, and if anyone wants to sort of rummage around in it, we can. In a development agreement, you have two kinds of amendment. There's a substantive amendment and a non-substantive amendment. Can you tell this was written by lawyers? Sounds like something a lawyer would write. So a substantive amendment is one that takes us back here. This is a big change to what's being proposed, and the only way to get that change is to go through another, in effect, the whole process again. Another public hearing, another option for appeal if council agrees to it. So we try to avoid those where we can because it's a lot of work. It demands a lot of the neighborhood. It demands a lot of both the developer and the town. Non-substantive amendments are different. They're where we agree that we don't have an absolutely clear crystal ball with respect to how things are going to unfold. We have some targets. Some of them are stretch goals that are embedded in the agreement, but we say, look, we get that you may not be able to start the development within 80 days. We get that you may not be able to finish the development within 2 years. We'd like you to try. We're going to stay on top of this. But if it turns out through circumstances beyond your control that you can't, you come back, and we have the ability to take a look at those and alter those sections that are listed as non-substantive. And largely they're around those ideas of when you start, when you finish, and that sort of thing. Let's see if I can get to the agreement itself. Figure out where my mouse is going first. There it is. So, and not showing up right now, so I'm going to somehow get it to be the thing. Bear with me for a moment. Still not showing up.
Some jeopardy.
Okay, I'm going to read. The landscaping I talked about, initially, once construction is finished on the big building, the balance of the site that's not under construction is going to be landscaped in some fashion. At the very least, it would be grass. Hopefully, it will also have some mini park features, some outdoor benches, some landscaping that kind of creates outdoor rooms and that sort of thing. We do acknowledge, though, that over the course of time, as NSCC understands the market needs, they may decide that, you know what, it would be a really good fit if we could do some small townhouses here. Where's the best place on the site that we have, the land that we have access to do those? Well, right now we have a little park there, but we know that we need this housing, and it's a short walk to Acadia Park. So those little areas that are green right now could become housing, and we hope that they will become housing, based upon that series of sliding intensities. So they don't really have, under this agreement, any land close to Monroe, so it's not in the periphery, it's all in the general area or the higher density area. But they would be able to ask to alter a park and turn it into housing. And that would be through that as of right process, because we have embedded the mini development agreement mini bylaw within the development agreement. So that's one of them. If there are provisions in the mini land use bylaw that made sense when we drafted it, but which turn out under further consideration down the road to be off by a bit. So for instance, if we said you have to have a 10-foot setback here, and they say, well, you know what, we can do this, but we have to have an 8-foot setback, for instance. That would be something that we could alter. And you can see why these are non-substantive things. We shouldn't have to go through all of this process to have these kinds of conversations. We are seeking to have less asphalt and more development on this site, more principally housing. And so the road standards that we're going to be using are smaller. They encourage lower speed traffic. They, as a consequence, are safer for people on bikes and walking and those sorts of things. We may find that in some areas we need to change that, or maybe we were actually setting our sights too high and can actually go with even smaller road systems. And so that saves cost to, in some cases, the taxpayer, in other cases, the developer, depending on where the section of road falls. So we have the ability to invest or inject some wiggle room in that through this process. There's a provision about being able to tie into adjoining lands. You were asking about some of the adjoining lands. So should, for example, someone decide to sell a piece of property to the northeast, to the town, or make it available to a developer, we would want to see those pieces tied together. We would want to see the road network, sidewalks, trails, those sorts of things tied together. So this allows us to amend that section of kind of what we contemplated as how transportation would work or circulation would work on the site. Talked about timelines. That's it. Those were the things that were listed in the non-substantive section. Now I've got to try to get back to the presentation. Bear with me. It's deciding not to show up on my screen. It's this one. Okay, I'm going to try to do it from up here. Nothing is working the way I think it should. Planning considerations. We've talked a little bit about the village master plan framework. We didn't know what to call it exactly. That is something that we have to pay attention to when we're looking at this development agreement. I've spoken about this implementation policy 12 and all the things that are contained in that. In this instance, there are a bit fewer than there were in the rezoning, but you still have to look at the other planning policies and regulations. You have to look at servicing fire and road safety, because we're now talking about a more specific development, not just the idea of a development. compatibility with surrounding area, which I've spoken about several times now, and environmental constraints. And this time we do talk about trees and buffering. So for instance, if they're going to be a place where solid waste is managed, we would like that sheltered behind landscaping, trees, a fence, something like that, as an example of the kinds of ways you use landscaping within a development agreement or buffering. Statements of provincial interest, the ones that pertain to this development agreement are flood risk, which is really about managing stormwater, how we deal with infrastructure, and housing. And I don't think I need to go into detail on these because I believe I already have. We've already seen this, and I think that's the end for me on this agreement, and leading into time for questions.
Okay, before you do that, I'm just going to wonder if Diane Gelderman, the CEO of Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, wanted to say a few words about the proposal on the development, from the development end of things, what is being actually proposed, other than what we've seen so far in the schematic renderings that we have. Diane, if you don't.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be here as you discuss this very exciting proposal that's before you. I think the best I can tell you is that we are 110% committed to this project. We will ensure that it is a legacy for the community. And I tend to think about projects and development by looking at the end and working back. So I'm already there when you're doing the ribbon cutting. I'm already there when people are having heads on their pillows and moving into this beautiful space. We've invested about, Alex, $30,000 already in terms of environmental assessments, appraisals, those kinds of things. So that's just the beginning. So that's certainly evidence of our commitment to the project. And as we've said already, our full investment in the project, as far as preliminary numbers are concerned, is somewhere between $12 and $15 million, which is very, very significant for us. So we're fully in. I think this is going to be a very exciting project and legacy for Westville, and we hope that you will support the proposed amendments, and we look forward to closing up the windows and getting the pigeons out and deciding on where we go next. I don't know if some of you were here when we presented previously, but we in the middle of the building, and I wish you could see all of the ins and outs of what the building actually looks like and what the units are going to look like. It's pretty impressive. But there's going to be a community room in the middle of the building, and we've decided to call it the Pigeon's Nest. So so we're already well along our way in terms of the thinking and the planning, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and to communicate with you, and for you dropping by as you see the development starting to happen.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions, comments anyone has with regard to the development agreement, with regard to the repurposing of the school and that property that we're talking about? At this point in time, I'd certainly entertain that if anyone has anything or comments otherwise. I'm going to take the, Diane, I'm going to take the fact that there are no questions as an endorsement from those residents that are here. And I do want to say on behalf of council, by the way, to all of you sitting out there in those uncomfortable chairs, thank you very much for your interest in this project and coming out to hear what we are proposing here. I can't even, I don't think I can overstate the fact that this is one of those major game-changing projects that we've been talking about. This council's been talking about. I personally have been talking about. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about it. The change is coming in Westville. This is the very, although other projects are going on now as we sit here, and soon to be seeing other developments happening in town of a significant nature. This one is the ultimate sort of, as far as I'm concerned, game-changing project to get us going in a new direction in this town of Westville. And I can't overstate that, I don't believe. And bursting with excitement to see that project get underway. By the way, this project has drawn the attention of across the province. I'm going to say Diane and myself are going to be participating in a panel discussion at the upcoming Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities conference in Truro, the first of next month, where there'll be delegates there from all over the province representing municipalities, and we're going to speak about this project at that conference, because one of the items on the agenda is the repurposing of municipally owned buildings, and this one is a highlight, I think, that we're going to share with the rest of the province, and it's a template, I think, for what other communities can do with some of these buildings that they've had acquired. Just so you know, the reason we have that school back, the reason we got that school back, 11 years ago, was because the way the Act reads with regard to schools in this province, any schools that were built prior to 1982, if they close that school, it goes back to the community in which it's situated. So the municipality bears the liability and the responsibility for taking that school back. We had no choice. When they decided to, when the school board of the day decided to close Highland Consolidated, they literally, and I'm not saying this figuratively, they literally dropped the keys on the desk of the CAO of the day at that day, and we acquired it at that time. So anything that's built after 1982 in schools, if they happen to close them for whatever reason, the province takes them back. They bear the responsibility of them. That's not the case with this school. So. I just want to add, Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, we could not have been more fortunate to find a partner interested in that school building than the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council. And I can tell you, these are the way things happen sometimes. CAO Weirs and myself were at a conference, happened to be in Pictou County here a couple of years ago now, Diane, I guess, when Diane was a speaker. And I think almost simultaneously at the same time, Scott and I nudged each other and said, we need to talk with this lady. She impressed us that much by her ability to get things done. And it's very evident that we wouldn't be at this stage if it were not for Diane, and I'm going to acknowledge Alex as well, who's going to be front and center in this project when it proceeds. So, it's a great partnership. And the only way that things happen in this town, through development and other things, is by forming partnerships, by finding the right people, making those connections, developing trust is important, and working together. And we've got that in spades with the Nova Scotia Community, Cooperative Council. So I hope I spoke long enough that now some of you are thinking some questions. So I see one already. Come ahead.
Larry McKinnon, 2326 Cowan Street. I firmly believe that we as citizens of the town cannot refrain totally from having some input here tonight, because this is a big, big deal for the town of Westville. And I think it should be pointed out that the Cooperative Council has existed for 75 years, and the track record is second to none. And Diane and Alex, the track record of those two is exceptional as well. And you mentioned that this is a game changer for the town of Westville, and certainly you and all of council, and certainly CAO Scott, and the work that this young man here has done for this town on a part-time basis is just amazing. And one of the things that I would like to say tonight is that there is a space for a couple of businesses, and it has been raised that it would be very nice, because the co-op actually has a tie-in with the credit union movement, and what a place for a credit union office. in the town of Westville, having lost 2 banks, and as a person that has been involved in the credit union movement for almost 60 years as a member, I certainly would love to see that happen. And I know Diane and Alex have the capability of making that happen. So that's just a plug.
No pressure. No
Thank
pressure.
you. Thank you very much. And a tribute to everyone that has been involved in this for a good many months. And it's in capable hands.
Th- Thank you. You had a question, comment? Come on up.
No, I was just wondering if we have a timeline as to when we can expect to see something happening?
Okay, so what's going to happen is momentarily after we finish this public hearing, we are going to have a special council meeting, which council will then be deciding on accepting the rezoning and accepting the development agreement, two motions, 2 matters. If that's done, which I anticipate, by the way, that it's going to happen, then there's a 2-week waiting period, or appeal period, sorry, that's the word. Appeal period that we have to advertise that we've accepted these agreements, and then there's a 2-week period to allow for anyone to come forward still with a concern. After that 2-week period is up, it'll be over to the NSCC to when they want to start, doing their demo work and start the project going. So it can happen pretty bloody quickly. Let's put it that way.
Just the other thing I would.
No pressure once again, by the way.
The other thing I would say is that, we will need to get to a land transfer agreement. So we'll have to actually move the land from being owned by the town to being owned by NSCC. And so there's some paperwork and legal
The
stuff that has to
unfortunate
happen.
part is we have to deal with lawyers and legalese and all that stuff, and that can go pretty slowly sometimes, but we're gonna speed that up as fast as we possibly humanly can. I'm a very impatient person when it comes to some of these things, and I can't for the life of me understand why it takes so long. I'm with probably a lot of you thinking that way as well, but, we have to follow the rules and the regulations. We operate under an act. We're a creature of the province, so we have to adhere to all these things, unfortunately. And sometimes I'm fairly patient in most things in life, but I'm very impatient with some of these things. But anyway, it'll happen. So time frame. The other thing we should mention is that there are time frames built into the development agreement itself, which obligates the NSCC to do certain things within a certain time period. After we agree on the development agreement, and once they have legal ownership of that property, then there are timelines that will kick in. And if you just want to mention those quickly, because I may get them wrong. I think I know them, but I'd rather that, Sean, if you can.
Timelines in the agreement
In
itself.
the agreement itself, yes.
So I think we may have a, see if I can find that just so I don't say it wrong, but I believe we've got a 2-year on construction.
Right.
Yeah,
Now, that's for the main building. That's not for other ancillary buildings that may happen. Those would have their own timelines, or maybe no timelines. It would just, they're gonna, this woman, she's gonna wanna build it yesterday, so.
Yeah, my recollection is, and I'd have to double check this, but my recollection is 8 months from transfer from NSCC having custody and control of the land. So construction to start within 8 months of transferring the land to them and signing the development agreement and that sort of thing.
It'll be
And-
starting the next day.
And then construction to be substantially complete within 24 months
yeah.
of the start.
I'm of the belief that it'll be sooner than 8 months after that, all those documents are signed properly.
With our team, once all of the documents are signed and everything is legal, we have the full green light, our team will be on site within a week.
Right,
Yeah.
I anticipate that.
And in all of the development projects we've done so far, many of which have been in Victor County, we've been on time and under budget.
Right.
So 24 months would certainly be our goal.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
The zoning that we're speaking
just that. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
That the whole bit of the property,
Right.
and even the stuff behind Queen Street?
The 21 acre site.
Right,
Yes.
that's what I assumed, but I'm just hearing that, that's why I'm wondering.
Yeah, so yes, so the rezoning applies to the whole 21 acres. The development agreement applies only to that portion where the school sits and 3.5 acres or 3 to 4 acres, I can't remember the exact number, around it. Okay? That's, so there's, yeah, good question, and there's two distinct things there. Right.
This is actually for the special meeting of council that's coming up, but I just wanted to point it out now. So in terms of adoption, particularly with respect to the development agreement, there's a couple of options. One is adopt it as you've seen it with no changes. One is adopt with amendments. That normally only happens if something comes up during the public hearing that would give you pause for consideration of some section or clause or sentence. If you find through the public hearing that something has been brought forward that is really a bit of a game changer, then you can send it back for further study, or you can reject the application.
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of bring
Right.
those forward now, that would be kind of the options you have to look for, at in the hearing.
I just remembered, I should have asked, and I forgot to ask, have we received anything in writing from any resident with regard to the hearing?
Yeah, no, Your Honor, we haven't. And so, we duly advertised as required by the Municipal Government Act, this public hearing on the town's website, on our Facebook site, posted it on the town office. Materials were available, and we encouraged people, if they wanted to, either reach out by telephone or by email to get a hold of me. And I have had nobody reach out to me at all.
Just ask that the record show that in our minutes of this hearing, so that there's no question about that going forward, which may arise. Okay, so hearing nothing further from residents seated, I think we've come to the end of the public hearing, and I'm just going to say that the public hearing is adjourned. We will be moving into our special council meeting without further delay, if that's okay. If you feel free that, feel free that if you wish to go, we're going to be dealing with the matters of obviously of the rezoning and the development agreement. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. So I am, if you wish to stay, you can. If you don't wish to, you're free to move about the cabin. It looks like most people assume what's going to happen next. It looks,
I'm going to run to the washroom.
okay. She's going to run the elevator down.
Oh, okay, yeah, the key is in it, the key in the ignition.
Are you gonna operate the elevator for us?
Yeah, I think somebody can operate,
Okay.
so I think we load in who we can load in.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Heat on in here, or is it just me? It's
Are we still running?
Yeah, we are, yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah, I'd be mindful of the camera still on, yes.
Should have probably just had a couple of breaks.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's so hard to know where to go into detail and where not to go into
And
detail.
that wasn't trying to drink water from a fire hose by any stretch either, so that was, I think that was a good amount of information. I'll have another one, please, Sarah, yeah. Is there a Diet Coke in there? I would love that, please, yes.
Scott, was there any pizza left?
I don't know. When I left, there was, but I left Andre in there with your pizza.
So you can-
Just go down, the door's open, see if there is anything.
Thank you. It's too bad there wasn't a mute feature on it, though. There probably is. We just to mute like the mics when you go off it. Like I know, like a lot of the hockey games, they'll still be streaming, but they're able to like mute the microphone so they don't hear me yelling at the referee.
That was the most exciting part. The elephant.
That was, and I saw it happening out of the corner of my eye too. I was like, oh no.
The button.
Because he has YouTube loaded up for the streaming stuff, but you know what it's
Exactly.
like, even
Yeah.
sometimes just a mouse over or something. You don't have to
Well, that's
click
what
on it, and it's.
Yeah, it turns the volume up. I thought it was entertaining.
I didn't find it too entertaining.
No, and then you find where to turn it off.
So we're still streaming?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're still streaming.
That's okay.
I have my mic on. Okay, I'm going to call the special council meeting, Town of Westville, to order. Roll call, Councillor McGregor, CAO Weirs, Councillor Fraser, Deputy Mayor McKinnon, myself, Mayor White. Any declaration of conflict of interest anyone has?
No.
Hearing none, move on to, we need one addition to the agenda, by the way, and that would be the Northumberland Regional High School yearbook sponsorship. So that's going to be number 5D on the special meeting. So the first item is the rezoning of the Consolidated High School from from 1 and R2 to CDD. And we have a resolution, I believe.
Yeah, Your Honor, I can read it if the council would prefer.
Please.
So it's Resolution 25-4-001, resolution regarding rezoning at 2157 South Main. Whereas Nova Scotia Cooperative Council has applied to rezone 2157 South Main Street from institutional and R2 to comprehensive development district to allow it to renovate the former Highland Consolidated School building to create a multi-unit residence. And whereas town staff have worked with the proponent in question to develop zoning appropriate to the site and the development, and whereas Westville Planning Advisory Committee reviewed and supported the application to rezone the property in question at its March 19th, 2025 meeting, and whereas the town has duly advertised and held a public hearing on the matter on April 10th, 2025, and whereas no substantial concerns about the proposed rezoning were raised at the public hearing, or for that matter, by telephone or email, therefore be it resolved that Westville Town Council supports the application to rezone 2157 South Main Street to Comprehensive Development District.
I move the resolution regarding rezoning at 2157 South Main Street.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded, ready for the question?
Question.
Questions called, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Development agreement, Consolidated High School.
Your Honor, again, I have a resolution for council to listen to and consider. Resolution 25-4-002 regarding development agreement at 2157 South Main Street. Whereas the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council has applied for a development agreement to allow it to renovate the former Highland Consolidated School building to create a multi-unit residence, and whereas town staff have worked with the proponent in question to negotiate a development agreement appropriate to the site and the zoning of the site, and whereas Westville Planning Advisory Committee reviewed the proposed development agreement at its March 19th, 2025 meeting, and a public hearing was duly advertised and held on April 10th, 2025, and whereas no substantive concerns were raised with the town or at the public hearing, therefore be it resolved that Westville Town Council approves the development agreement for 2157 South Main Street.
I move that we approve the resolution regarding the development agreement at 2157 South Main Street.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, ready for the question?
Question.
Questions called, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Northumberland Regional High School Yearbook sponsorship request.
Yeah, so if I could just make a couple of comments about that. So this is with regard to the yearbook, the development of the yearbook. They're looking for a $100 donation. The reason it's here is, you know, normally it would go into your community grant thing. We don't have the budget quite passed. But there is some time sensitivity to this. If we miss this, then the yearbook gets developed, and so anyway, for $100 in the past, we've done it, or you've done it, council has done it in the past. So my recommendation is that we do the $100 and move on.
Yeah, Your Worship, I see this no different than the occasional requests that come through for hockey tournaments and sports tournaments. And we've talked about this before, where there's such, you know, a low dollar amount. So with that, I would move to give a $100 donation to Northumberland High School for their yearbook.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Are you ready for the question?
Question.
Questions called. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Just a quick note that our next special council meeting is going to be on the 16th.
Next Wednesday.
Which is next week, April 16th. And at that meeting, we'll be dealing with the budget, hopefully looking at the scope of the budget for the coming year, and hopefully approval of the budget.
Correct.
That'll be the major item on that agenda, I believe. We may have a couple other things that
There
we'll
may
need as well.
be some things that come out of PAC
Right,
that happens next week also
Right.
that could occur.
right. And because we did forego our meeting last week, our regular council meeting, there may be some items that we were going to address there that we'll move forward to the special meeting on the 16th. So
Right.
that'll be the next meeting.
Yeah, and I just would, just to remind the people at home and in the audience here that there is an appeal period.
Right,
It runs for 14 days, but there is no more work for council to do. You know, short of somebody appealing.
right.
And if somebody appeals, then there is more work for council to do. You'll have to give consideration to that appeal and make a decision whether you find the appeal to be substantive and valid or not. But assuming there is nobody making an appeal, there will be no further discussion about this. It's just once the appeal process is over, the development agreement comes into force. And, you know, at that time, we will, our lawyer is currently working on an agreement of purchase and sale to transfer the property already. And, you know, we'll wait till obviously the appeal process expires or period expires. And once that happens, then we'll be able to sit down with NSCC and sign the transfer agreement.
Right. Very good. Hearing no other business,
Turn in camera? No, in camera. No? Perfect.
no other business, I declare the meeting adjourned.